Hi guys, welcome back. This is Matt Chat 117, featuring the third and final part of my interview with Chris Taylor, the brain behind Dungeon Siege, Total Annihilation, and Supreme Commander. In this part of the interview, we talk about Space Siege, Supreme Commander, lots of other stuff, including the questions you guys sent in. Lots of great stuff, so without further ado, here is Mr. Chris Taylor. Alright, so let's talk a little bit about Supreme Commander. Now this is, according to my sources, in 2007. In this game, I mean, the reviews were fantastic for this. And I was really surprised to see that you actually had a hard time getting a publisher to bite. And you sort of had to resort to some tactics to get it picked up. Why do you know, how could publishers be so blind?
Well, you know, games cost a lot of money to make, and it was a PC game, and console gaming was really on fire at the time, and there's a lot of talk of PC gaming being dead. There was a lot of early prognostication of it dying, even though it wasn't officially dead yet. And it never really died, in case anyone was paying attention. There's a lot of talk about death, dying. There's a joke in there somewhere, or there's at least, maybe there's a song or a poem in there somewhere about the artificial sky is falling thing that's we've been living with for 10 years in PC gaming. But, when you're making a big bet, you're spending millions of dollars, you've got to have the publishing organization has to really rally behind it, and they have to all believe they're going to make money, and they're going to make their bonuses, and they're going to make their numbers, they're going to make all of the, and if there's another game that's sitting on the table that they could spend that 5, 10, 15 million, whatever it happens to be. I mean, back then, I mean, even 15, $25 million budget games were not uncommon. You're going to spend your money as a publisher on that game instead. So sometimes you just get stack ranked to the bottom of, here's 25 games we'd love to publish, but whoopsie, we can only spend money on the first 10. So something's got to give. As it turned out, the way we jumped around between publishers and we did that, it all worked out really, really well. Like, it was, talk about getting a lucky bounce, it all worked out terrific. And the publishing partner we ended up with, we really embraced it and got excited about it. And you need that. You need the individuals inside the publisher to get excited about the game. So it all worked out at the end. I have no complaints.
Now, there's a story I was reading about how you got the game on the cover of a magazine, and that's what finally got a publisher interested.
Yeah, it's hard for me to remember, if you can believe this, everything that's happened in my career.
No, I don't find that hard to believe.
If you could pan 360 in this office and see all the games and the trinkets and the tchotchkes and the posters and the events and the press and everything that's happened, it gets to be a blur. But I think you're right, and I believe PC Gamer was the one who did the story, and they did me a wonderful, they gave me a wonderful lift there. Those guys have just been great. I mean, I love them. I'll never, ever, ever, ever cancel my PC Gamer subscription because those guys have just treated me so well and helped my business and helped me to get the word out on my games. So I believe it was Dan Morris was the editor-in-chief or the writer who wrote the story on it. So I really appreciate that, Dan. I owe Dan an enormous debt of gratitude for that. But that's all coming. See, it's all coming back to me. That's how my brain works. It's like I had it stored on tape, and I had to have someone mount the tape. That's like all the old guys out there don't know what I'm talking about.
There's a version for the 360, which I thought was kind of interesting because, I've read a lot of commentary about how it seems like the consoles aren't the best place for an RTS. They'll never adapt to the consoles. What do you think about all that?
Well, at one time, first-person shooters would never work on a console. And we know how that story ends. So we thought RTS, being the other big PC genre, would make a transition over to the console. As it turns out, I believe RTS runs great on a console. I know that's going to surprise some people to hear me say that. Buy Supreme Commander 2 for the 360, give it 4 hours to learn the controls, and you're going to say, holy cow, this plays fine. Now, part of why it plays fine is because of strategic zoom, the ability to zoom out and to zoom in. Without that, it's a lot harder. It still works, it's just going to be clumsier. But man, we did some crazy stuff in Supreme Commander 2 to really fix that UI. One of them was an idea we took from Halo, which was Paint Select. Halo Wars, pardon me. We added a mode. Evan came up with this. Evan was one of our designers, and he just came up with this brilliant idea called Paint Attack, where you click and hold the attack, and you swipe the thing around on the screen with a big brush, and you just attack. And it was so cool that we adopted it. We took it over to the PC version, and it was a huge improvement to the way you could do this. Instead of having to so you're sitting there and you click, 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 click on every single thing you're attacking. You just go click, and you go, and you just paint all those units, and then your army just goes munches and crunches through them all. It was awesome. So to answer your question, A, yeah, RTS runs great on a console. B, we had great ideas that we were able to bring back to the PC. And C, when we finally figured it out, it seems like the party had moved on. And people were like, we don't care anymore. I was like, why? This is a tremendous... but I feel good because I feel like we cracked the nut. We solved it. Regardless of whether the world cared or not, we solved it.
All right, then let's talk briefly about Space Siege. So Dungeon Siege in Space, 2008 Windows game, Space Siege. What can you tell me about that?
Well, we had this idea that we take the Dungeon Siege process that we learned. You know, we learned how to build a world and build an RPG. And what we failed on was we thought that because we understood the process and we had the tools and the technology that we could build a brand new fictional universe and world and do it really fast, like do it in 18 months instead of 3 years. And if you've played the game, you'll see that it doesn't have the magic that Dungeon Siege had, and that's largely a function of trying to make a big game in a very short period of time. It's like, you know, the old saying, 9 women can't have a baby in 1 month. Well, it applies to RPGs. And, I have to take a lot of blame for that because it was my crazy idea. It was me saying, we can do this. The business was getting tougher. PC gaming was under siege. The budgets were compressing. And I was bullish. I said, no, we can do this game and we can do it inexpensively. And I was just wrong.
Well, it seems like things are working out much better for Dungeon Siege 3. I've seen some great reviews for that.
It's funny. I haven't checked the reviews, so I will take your word for it.
But do you not look at reviews, or
you know what?
Have a grace period, or
you've heard this before, but I mean, reviews are painful to read. If they're all good and you just want to shower yourself in praise, that's fine. But when you get mixed reviewers out there and you get people who seem like they're permanently angry and hate everything, I just don't include it in my routine. Invariably, I hear the final score though. The Metacritic score always seems to find its way to me. And the Metacritic thing just drives me crazy too. It's just like, really? You take an average? You have no qualifiers on that number? But anyway, it's okay. We all have to carry that burden.
Yeah, absolutely. I just wanted to ask you about another great quotation of yours that I thought was really, I couldn't agree with this more. And you were saying that you wish we could get back to the point we were in the 80s when somebody could just walk past a Pac-Man machine and say, wow, that looks cool. But now we seem to have these two extremes, right? You got the hardcore gaming, and the hardcore is too hardcore, the casual is too casual, and you want to do something about that. So what are you doing about that?
Well, it's interesting. Age of Empires Online certainly scratches that itch. I mean, it is right there in the sweet spot. I mean, it's a game with depth and strategy, and you have tactics, and just incredibly huge game with an incredible world. But it's also a game that a more casual and social gamer can jump into. So I think we've got the right thing there. Compliments of all the hard work the guys have done at Robot and Microsoft and Ensemble over the years. I mean, those guys are really the guys who really did the heavy lifting on that. We're just really excited to be a part of it. But the 90s is kind of what I referred to as the early 90s was a great time. You had a lot of creativity, you had a lot of innovation. The budgets were still low enough that people would take chances and just throw stuff at the wall to see what sticks. We're returning to that, and somebody out there in the middle of nowhere can prop a website and write a game in Flash or Java or JavaScript or Unity, and they can drum up some excitement for it and get people playing it, maybe even make some money, which was unheard of back in the 90s. You couldn't put a product on the shelf if you were an individual just who liked to code on weekends. So this is the most exciting time I think ever. I don't think it gets any better than this. I mean, I don't care if you make soap in your garage, you can put a website up and you have the world that could shop your soap store, and gaming is no exception. Because gaming can be digitally distributed, it's even better than the soap analogy. But before, if you didn't have, distribution and sales and all of this infrastructure, you couldn't get into a business. And so now, innovative, creative-minded people can make their dreams come true. I'm not saying it's easy, but it's a hell of a lot easier than it was, I mean, by probably a decimal point, so that's exciting. It's just exciting. It's an exciting time.
I notice you seem to prefer a smaller company, right? I think Gas Powered Games has something like 60 employees. Is that correct?
Yeah, we grew a little bit to handle a little bit of a rush on building some content, so we're up a little over 70. But generally speaking, I have no goals for size. This is it's not an ego contest where, if you were like 70 is good, but 140 is better. I would be perfectly fine with 50, 40, 30, 10, whatever number is the right number to make the game. And you got to think of it more like a movie production than you think of it as a traditional business. So, for example, if you're a director on a movie and you've got a shot, you're shooting a scene where there's 1,000 people coming over a hill screaming, right? You don't say, "Oh yeah, I got 1,000 people working for me." You go, "That's what it took to make the shot work." And in gaming production, it's the same thing. You kind of hire however many people you need to get the work done, and then you can shrink back down again after the work is done, and nobody's no harm, no foul. Nobody's upset because they all understood, hey, there was 3 months worth of work, there was a year's worth of work, whatever. But the size of a gaming company now is less relevant, I think, than it ever was.
I saw another quotation of yours. I always bring up these quotations from other interviews that I find interesting. But you had said, when I think about designing a brand new game, first sheet of paper, I think about Europe first. You remember that? I was really perplexed by that comment.
Not every single thing I've said makes sense, although I can certainly make sense of any silly thing I've said by using a bullshit answer. I was probably, if I had to guess, I was probably referring to how Europe is built out of so many different factions of people, like governments, religions, what have you, and not so much religion probably, but just the sort of colorful sort of nature of the way a map looks, all broken up into its bits and pieces, rather than a giant country like Canada or United States or Russia or something like that, or China, right? It's just not interesting. Doesn't have that crunchiness to it. But I would be curious to know in what context I said that, and then I would probably be able to construe and make up and invent a even more ridiculous answer.
All right, I just have a couple last questions here. These are submitted by viewers of the show. First one's from a viewer named Chris Anderson, and he wants to know, I'm interested to know how much the toolkits and modding community have affected your views on game design.
Well, after Total Annihilation, we were so taken aback by the incredible work the community had done. I mean, there's just nobody that could have predicted how fabulous, I mean, over the top. I mean, it was crazy. I think at one point we had over 100 fan sites dedicated to Total Annihilation. We had a website which listed them, and you scrolled and scrolled and scrolled that website, and I was like, wow, this is incredible. So we tried to duplicate that completely in Dungeon Siege by building all these tools that would be released, and tremendous cost, like super expensive. But the impact, to answer the question, Chris's question, it totally had an impact, such that we spent probably 20% of the money on on developing tools for the community. And the responsible business person says, how do you monetize that expense and that investment? How do you monetize it such that it pays for itself, such that you're not just giving money away? The irresponsible, creative-minded game designer guy says, who gives a shit? I don't even care. Woo, woo, right? Well, yeah, and there's a lot of woo, woo, right? Like, that's all we do, right? Run around with Nerf guns. Now, seriously, like, you know, if you can find a way to monetize that kind of community component to your game, well, then you really win, because you can say, listen, there's entertainment value there and it's worth something, but it doesn't have to cost a fortune. Nobody has to get rich. This whole question, it's like in America, it's like everybody has to get rich. I was never interested in getting rich. All I wanted to do was to put an experience into people's hands and make them happy and pay my own, rent. And when it came down to it in later games, as each game went along, we realized we had to cut it because the economy was tight, budget was tight, and we just didn't have the dollars to support that anymore. And I couldn't. And remember, I don't spend the money out of my own pocket. I have to go raise the money by pitching a publisher on something. And the process of raising money got so much tighter and more controlled, where they're like, well, man, what are you going to spend this money on? How many characters are in the game, and how much art, or how much code, and how many sounds, and how many levels? Like, the circle was getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and it's hard to say, oh, let's carve out a big chunk to making tools for the community and get no return other than it'll create goodwill. This was hard to sell, and of course, the result, right, is that now it's like, if you can hack the files, again, we're back to where we were in the beginning. If you can hack the files and mod the game, then terrific. We're all for it, Hack away. Don't violate the EULA.
Have you seen the Ultima 5 Lazarus game made with the engine, Dungeon Siege engine?
Yes. That took me a second to pull that up out of memory. Yeah, that's pretty impressive piece of work.
All right, so this final question here is submitted by Tony McCrary. He wants to know how do you see the mobile revolution affecting strategy games?
Well, the mobile revolution is affecting everything, not just strategy games. I think it's allowing people to play more strategy games than ever. So it's helping. It's bringing back turn-based games. Never would have believed it. I'm playing a game on Facebook right now called Army Attack by Digital Chocolate. This game has tremendous potential as a turn-based game. The guys are adding content to it all the time. And, with Facebook games, you launch it and then you turn the knobs. I got to raise my hands. You turn the knobs to adjust it to make it, make the experience more fun, sticky, whatever. But I think we're going to be playing more strategy games than ever on more devices than ever. So it's been a tremendous benefit. And mobile gaming in general has just made gaming available to more people. I mean, it seems like everyone is playing games now. When was this true before? It was us geeks, just us guys with, the big rigs, the gaming consoles and the big PC rigs, that thought it was completely okay to spend $3,000 on a fat, tweaked out rig. You could light a cigarette off the CPU cooling system, right? It's like, yeah, look at this thing, man. I had quad core before people had dual core. That's the way. It's just stupid, and now everybody's playing games. So I'm thinking gaming is going to do even better this time around, next 20 years.
All right, excellent. Is there anything you wanted to add or something we haven't talked about?
You can tell I'm a total ad libber, so I've been adding as we've gone along, and I appreciate your patience in letting me just wing it.
Oh, no way. I mean, well, everybody needs to go out right now and buy Supreme Commander 2, Dungeon Siege 3, and then you said Age of Empires Online will be available August 16th. All right. Well, thank you so much, Chris. It's been an honor and a privilege talking to you. A lot of fun, too. Very, very animated guy.
That's what they tell me. I'm animated.
It's going to be great.
I'm 44 years old, and I still feel like I'm 17, except that I have this terrible pain here in my chest.
And that's all for this week's episode. Hope you guys enjoyed that. Should be back next week with a retrospective on Daggerfall, the Elder Scrolls game that got the most votes. And I set up a forum over at Armchair Arcade, so sometime before next week, go there and post your stories, experiences, facts, factoids, whatever you want to share about the game, and I'll see if I can work them into my retrospective. I'll post a link to that in the show notes. And as always, I want to thank everyone who has so generously donated and supported this show. It's really needed, and I really am very grateful to everyone who has done that. If you haven't done that yourself, or you have a few dollars you'd like to throw my way, I'll also have a link to my Matt Chat page over at Armchair Arcade, where you can find the links to PayPal and whatnot. Also at Armchair Arcade, you can find my audio podcasts, along with Chris Kennedy's, one of my friends there at Armchair Arcade. If you like Matt Chat, I don't see any reason why you wouldn't like those podcasts too. They are in audio form only, which might make it easier for you to listen to on your iPods or iPhones or what have you. Anyway, let me get out of here. As usual, though, I'll leave you with a quotation, this time from Pablo Picasso, and it goes something like this: "The greatest enemy of creativity is good sense." See you guys next week.
Psychic, though? That sounds like something out of science fiction.
You live in a spaceship, dear.
So?